conference hall now. Ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask you to take your seats now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the chairman of the Munich Security Conference, Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger.
Thank you all. After the United States in the first segment of this morning, we're now turning to the other side of the world. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome for the 8th time, he's been here 7 times before, I think that is probably a record among senior officials with the same function coming to us so often. A very warm welcome to you, Wang Yi, Director of the Communist Party Central Committee's Foreign Affairs Commission, and Minister of Foreign Affairs of China. You have the floor, sir.
Chairman, Wolfgang Ischinger, friends and colleagues, it gives me great pleasure to join you again at the Munich Security Conference for the conversation with China. Over the past year, the international landscape was marked by growing transformation and turbulence, and the law of the jungle and unilateralism went rampant. Humanity has come to a new crossroads for the cause of peace and development. At such a juncture, President Xi Jinping has put forward the Global Governance Initiative, or GGI, and called for following the 5 principles of sovereign equality, international rule of law, multilateralism, the people-centered approach, and real actions, with a view to jointly building a more just and equitable global governance system. This initiative aligns with the progressive trend of the times, represents the biggest common ground of the world's nations, and has thus received widespread response from the international community shortly after its announcement. It injects new impetus into the endeavor to build the community with a shared future for humanity and offers a compass for the giant ship of history to navigate through storms toward a brighter future. Now that humanity has weathered wind and rain to come this far, pulling together should be the imperative choice. We should reform and improve global governance to set the ship of history on the right course. In reforming and improving global governance, the priority is to revitalize the UN system. The founding of the UN is an important outcome of the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War. It is a historic choice made by previous generations after painful reflection on past agonies, and it is the peace endeavor that nations have invested their greatest efforts in thus far. This edifice was jointly built by the people of the world, who have every responsibility to reinforce and renovate it and no right to destroy it or tear it down. The UN is not perfect in its current form, but it remains the most universal and authoritative international and intergovernmental organization in the world. On the UN platform, every country, regardless of its size or wealth, has a voice and a sacred vote, as well as its due obligations and equal rights. Without the UN, the world would revert to the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak, and many medium and small-sized countries would lose the multilateral foundation critical to their survival and development. So what is imperative for us today is to recommit to the founding mission of the UN, revitalize its leading role, abide by the purposes of the UN Charter, and enhance the efficiency and efficacy of the UN system, so that the organization will be able to better adapt to the needs of the 21st century and unleash renewed vitality. In reforming and improving global governance, the key lies in the collaboration and cooperation of all countries. The reason why the international system is not functioning well enough lies not with the UN itself, but rather with certain countries seeking to magnify differences and disagreements, put itself above everyone else, stoke bloc confrontation, and even revive the Cold War mentality. So all these have eroded the foundation of trust, worsened the atmosphere for cooperation, and impeded the functioning of international institutions. To safeguard international collaboration and cooperation, it is important to seek common ground while shelving differences and pursue winning cooperation. The world is a diverse place. It is only natural that countries differ in social systems, history, culture, interests, and demand. And it is precisely the differences that necessitate dialogue and cooperation. There is no reason why countries cannot respect each other and contribute to each other's success. Just like the way gentlemen engage with one another, there could be harmony without uniformity. A review of history shows, from the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War to overcoming the global financial crisis, from the global climate response to fighting terrorism, none of such progress would have been possible without countries coming together for sincere cooperation despite their differences. So let us bear in mind that unity brings strength, and only in unity can we find hope. In reforming and improving global governance, multilateralism should be always upheld. Power monopolization by a few countries is simply unpopular. We live in a multipolar world and need to practice true multilateralism. There needs to be greater democracy in international relations. Global affairs should be discussed by all, and the future of the world should be decided by all. We need to make sure that all countries abide by the same set of rules, i.e., the basic norms governing international relations underpinned by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. All countries should be equal in terms of rights, opportunities, and rules, and all countries, in particular small and medium-sized ones, should be able to find their places and play their roles in international relations. To practice multilateralism, major countries in particular should lead by example. They should take the lead in advancing cooperation instead of conflict or confrontation. They should take the lead in observing rules instead of applying double standards. They should take the lead in promoting equality instead of imposing their will onto others. They should take the lead in encouraging openness instead of resorting to self-serving unilateralism. The Global South is rising collectively. The global governance system should also stay up to date to give more prominence to their voices and representation. Time will prove that the more democratic international relations are, the more peaceful the world is, the stronger multilateralism gets, the more effective global governance becomes. In reforming and improving global governance, the pressing task is to stop conflict and promote peace. While looking into the future, we should not forget the present. Without peace, global governance will be out of the question. As we speak, there are still more than 60 conflicts dragging on unabated across the world, bringing traumatic suffering to the affected populations. The vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security proposed by President Xi Jinping has pointed the way for resolving the issues. We should promote talks for peace and oppose attempts to escalate the situation. We should resolve differences through mediation and overcome conflicts through dialogue. In Gaza, the realization of ceasefire and reconstruction will require unremitting efforts. To implement the two-state solution and restore justice to the Palestinian people is the unshakable responsibility of the international community. The situation in Iran has a direct impact on peace in the Middle East. Relevant parties should act with prudence and avoid creating new conflicts. On the Ukraine crisis, the door to dialogue is finally open. All parties concerned should seize the opportunity to reach a comprehensive, durable, and binding peace agreement, remove the root causes of the conflict, and bring about lasting peace and stability in Europe. On Venezuela, the red line of international rule of law must not be crossed, and the principle of state sovereignty must be upheld. Friends, this year, China kicks off the implementation of its 15th Five-Year Plan for economic and social development. All our endeavors are aimed to secure a better life for the Chinese people. We aspire for a stable external environment for our development, and we also hope to make the world a better place through our development. China will be a staunch force for peace, will commit to the path of peaceful development, and we encourage all countries to do the same. China will be a reliable force for stability. We will uphold international fairness and justice and explore a distinctly Chinese approach to resolving hotspot issues. China will be a progressive force in history. We will resolutely defend the outcomes of the progress of human civilization, advance the implementation of the 4 major global initiatives, and promote the building of a community with a shared future for humanity. Both China and Europe have time-honored civilizations and stand as indispensable poles in this multipolar world. The choices we make now are crucial to the future of the world. In the journey toward world multipolarity and economic globalization, China and Europe are partners, not rivals. As long as we keep that in mind, we will be able to make the right choices in the face of challenges. We will be able to prevent the world from slipping into division and keep moving human civilization forward. Let us work together to recalibrate the course of history and create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. We have time for a few questions which people from the audience have sent over to me. Let me start by the one question that's on everybody's mind here, the question related to the war in Ukraine. I hope this is going to be the last time that we need to discuss this question about how to end this war. Many of us hope that this will be the year when this war will actually be ended. The United States, Marco Rubio just spoke before you. The United States is actively engaged with Russian negotiators and Ukrainian negotiators to try to end this war. My question is a very simple one. What can China do? What can China contribute to convince Russia to finally end this war and to withdraw from Ukraine? Please.
China's position and stance is clear that all regional hotspot issues should be resolved through dialogue and consultation, and we need to find a political settlement. So this holds true for the Ukraine crisis, but China is not a party directly involved. We don't have the final say. What we are doing is to promote talks for peace. So that's why we sent our special representative on shuttle diplomacy, and through all possible channels, we have been sending our message that we want to see a cessation of hostilities at an early date and the resumption of dialogue. But finally, now we are seeing that the peace talks have begun, and I think now what are being discussed are the real issues. We welcome this because without dialogue, how can peace ever arrive? If we don't keep dialogue going, a peace deal, a treaty will not fall from the sky. So we hope that through our consistent efforts, we can reach a comprehensive, durable, and long-lasting and binding peace deal acceptable to all parties. So I think this is the common goal of the international community, including China. Europe should not watch this from the sidelines. Right here in Munich last year, at that time, the United States had started engagement with Russia, and Europe seemed to be left watching from the sidelines. And I said then that since the conflict broke out right here in Europe. Europe has every right to participate in the negotiation in due course. So I said that Europe should not be on the menu, but should be at the table. But now we are seeing that Europe has come up with the courage to talk with Russia. This is good, and we support this, but we think that we should not have dialogue for dialogue's sake. I think Europe should come up with your ideas and your plans on how to resolve this issue. And in this process, we need to foster a more balanced, effective, and sustainable security architecture for Europe. So by doing this, we are addressing the root causes of the crisis, and we can prevent it from reoccurring and to achieve sustainable and lasting peace. China will, in our own way, give our full support for the peace process. I thank you.
Thank you. Please allow me to push you just a little bit more on this question. I remember that when this war broke out, now 4 years ago, on this stage here, we were discussing the issue then, and you made a very important statement then, namely that China remained committed to the fundamental principles of the United Nations, including territorial integrity and sovereignty. Can you repeat, would you say again today that China remains committed to the idea of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine?
China is a major country, so I think it is incumbent on us to keep our policy stable and consistent. We should not have all the policy flip-flops. So China is such a major country. We mean what we say, and we do what we say in implementing our policies. And after it is implemented, we will see it through to the end. So the 4 things must be done, proposed by President Xi Jinping, is just this. First, the sovereignty and territorial integrity should be observed, and all the legitimate security concerns of all parties needs to be observed. This is what we say, and we will continue to mean what we say and do what we say. We will continue to be a force for peace in the world.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's turn to U.S.-China relations. The previous speaker was Marco Rubio, who talked a little bit about the same question also. There are obviously continuing contentious issues between the United States and China. Taiwan appears to be one of them, but not the only one. So my very simple question to you this morning is, since we know that there will be a summit between President Xi Jinping and President Trump in like 2 months in April, could you describe a little bit your expectations regarding that summit? Does China expect, as President Trump would probably call it, a deal with the United States, or what would you see as a positive outcome from a Chinese perspective?
How China and the United States get along bears on the fundamental trajectory of the international situation. So China, with a sense of responsibility to the world, to history, and to the people, we approach and handles our relations with the U.S. President Xi Jinping has summed up the lessons of China-U.S. relations over the past decades and proposed the 3 principles: mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and willing cooperation. So through dialogue and consultation, we seek to find the right way for the 2 major countries to get along well with each other on this planet. And we will continue on this path so that in the interest of our 2 peoples and in line with the expectation of the international community. But whether we can achieve that goal ultimately depends on the United States. But we are encouraged that President Xi has shown respect for President Xi Jinping and for the Chinese people. He has stressed that the U.S. and China working together can get a lot of great things done. And the 2 presidents can make the fantastic relationship between the United States and China even better. But I'm not sure whether all people in the United States share this view. So some people, they are still trying everything possible to suppress and contain China. They are doing everything to attack and smear China. So I think there are two different prospects lying ahead for our bilateral relations. One is the United States can understand China reasonably and objectively and have a positive and pragmatic policy toward China, and our two sides work together in the same direction, expand our interests that will lead us to cooperation. So that would really be the best outcome for both countries and the world. And the other prospect is seeking decoupling from China and severing supply chains and oppose China on everything in a purely emotional, knee-jerk way. So they are cobbling together all these small, exclusive circles, and they are trying to split Taiwan from China and stepping on China's red lines, which would very much likely push China and the United States toward conflict. But China, on our part, wants to see the first prospect, and I believe you share the same way, but China is well prepared to address all kinds of risks. China believes that history always moves forward despite twists and turns. China is confident about the prospects of the China-US relations, and we believe that the vision and objectives put forward by President Xi Jinping will be realized, because this is the only right choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have just a couple of minutes left. Let's turn to China and the European Union, if I may. We Europeans have learned the hard way that strong dependencies are not a good idea. We were dependent to a very large degree on energy supplies from Russia. Today, some people are warning that Europe might get too dependent on China. So could you talk a little bit about China's strategy to convince Europeans that it's a good idea and not a bad idea to engage more strongly with China, and that China is going to be, from a European point of view, a credible long-term partner and not, as our papers have said in the past, in recent past, a systemic rival and maybe even a strategic adversary?
其实这个问题非常的简单。
I think this is a simple answer, and I think China and the EU are partners. We are not systemic rival or strategic competitor. We have been engaged with each other for half a century, and we've accumulated all these outcomes and deliverables. Aren't they enough to tell the true nature of China-EU relations? So now I think every year the trade volume for one day exceeds the trade volume for the first year after we established diplomatic relations. So why someday China suddenly became a rival of the EU? I think this is very negative thinking, and this will do no good. We don't want to see the amplification of the so-called narrative of systemic rival, because this will be toxic for the future development of China-EU relations. But there are differences and divergences between our two sides. For example, our social systems, our values, and our development model. But that's because we have different history and culture, and based on this, our peoples have different choices about the way we develop. But that doesn't mean that we should become rivals or competitors. What's important is that we should respect each other, admire each other, and learn from each other, and grow together, and light up the world. This is the right choice. Chinese ancient philosophers said that all things can coexist on earth without harming each other, and always can go parallel with each other. So I think this was proposed over 2,000 years ago in China. So at that time, we had those wisdom, and I think now we can do better. And Confucius once said that for gentlemen, we can achieve harmony without uniformity. So we acknowledge that there are differences and divergences between us, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't reach better harmony. So this is what we should seek, and this is how gentlemen should get along with each other. So I think both sides can follow this way and can do like a gentleman does, especially in this current tumultuous international landscape. It is more important for China and the EU to practice multilateralism, to safeguard the authority of the United Nations, to say no to unilateral practices, and to safeguard free trade and oppose bloc confrontation. I sincerely invite all our European friends to join us in the implementation of the Global Governance Initiative proposed by President Xi Jinping and build a more just and equitable global order. This is what we should do together.
Thank you. Very last question. We've already run out of time, actually. Asia Pacific. When we look at reports about possible or actual renewed tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, can you present a message of reassurance about what China is prepared to do to avoid, to prevent renewed escalation, renewed concerns about tensions, possible military confrontations in your part of the world?
First, I don't think that the situation in Asia Pacific is getting increasingly tense. In today's world, Asia is probably the only region that maintains overall peace. Not long ago, border clashes broke out between Thailand and Cambodia, but that was brought to a halt with China playing our mediating role. China has become an important pillar for peace in Asia. And as one of the world's most important forces for peace today, we will continue to play a constructive role in safeguarding regional peace and stability. But of course, Asia is not without challenges. Here, I wish to say one thing, that is, we should be alert to a very dangerous development in Asia. Not long ago, the sitting Japanese Prime Minister said publicly that a Taiwan contingency amounts to a survival-threatening situation that could trigger the use of collective self-defense. So this is the first time in 80 years that a Japanese Prime Minister has uttered such words. It directly violates China's territorial sovereignty, and it directly challenges the fact that Taiwan has been returned to China. It completely violates Japan's commitment to China. Could China possibly accept this provocation? No way. No Chinese can accept it. Here, we are in Europe, in Germany. I like to make a comparison. After the Second World War, Germany conducted a thorough reckoning with Nazi crimes and passing laws to ban all the speech and actions promoting Nazi ideology. But Japan still pays homage to the Class A war criminals, and they are enshrined as so-called heroic spirits. So this means that Japan has lingering ambitions for invasion and colonialism of Taiwan, and the ghost of militarism are still haunting the country. The lessons are not far behind us. Back then, Japan also cited the so-called survival-threatening situation to launch its war of aggression against China, and also the Pearl Harbor. If we don't If
历史的规律。
Japan doesn't truly repent on its wrongdoing, history will only repeat itself. This is the lesson we should learn. So I think all the conscious people should be alert and stay sharp. The Japanese people
甚至想复活军国主义的势力所
should not let the far-right extremists
一切爱好和平的
fool and drag them along. And every country that values peace should shout this loud and clear at Japan right now. If you go back down that old road, it will be a dead end. If you try gambling again,
败得更快。
the loss will be faster and more devastating. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister. Thank you very much. We have run out of time. Let's offer a round of applause. And please come again next year. That will be the 9th time of your appearance.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. The program will continue momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated in the main conference hall.